Republicans don't focus on what is really causing problems, they're going to fall for the canard that the problem with the Republican Party is its conservative principles. Au contraire, conservatism is about the only thing the Republicans have going for them. In Gallup polls over the last 20 years, about twice as many Americans have called themselves conservative as called themselves either liberal or Republican. No, conservatism is our winning feature, which brings me to the final point before I get to your questions, and that is this scapegoating of a fake Republican establishment, which is allowing the real Republican establishment to plot and scheme undetected. And my example of this is what public policy will harm average Americans, drive up unemployment, change America permanently in negative ways, and on the other hand is supported by businessmen who will never vote for a Republican anyway. Amnesty for illegal aliens. And half of elected or Republicans support it. As far as I can tell, most conservative talk radio and TV hosts support it. You want the Republican establishment, that's the Republican establishment. There are many negative consequences to amnesty, but the one that I think ought to concern this crowd is if amnesty goes through, America becomes California, and no Republican will ever win another national election. As it is, the state that gave us Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan will never elect another Republican. I can see why Democrats would want amnesty, but why on earth are Marco Rubio and these endless Bushes supporting it? Even Schempp and Zeppo Bush are supporting amnesty for illegals. Republicans are grasping at these suicidal policies because they're panicked, they're demoralized after the last election. Stop panicking, Republicans. Obama was an incumbent. He did worse than any other incumbent to win re-election in more than 100 years. Liberals writing the obituary of the Republican Party right now remind me of nothing so much as new homeowners at the height of the housing bubble. People always announce their complete triumph a moment before their crushing defeat. Our job, Republicans, is to ensure Democrats have that crushing defeat. Thank you, and I'll take some questions.
Thank you. I have a
Are you
question.
there?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Do you believe Chris Christie should have been invited to CPAC this year?
Should he have been what?
Invited.
The nominee?
Chris Christie.
Should he have what?
Been invited to speak.
Oh,
at CPAC
invited
this year.
to speak. Did you see his convention speech?
Yes.
It was really bad. And I must say, though I, as you know, have loved Chris Christie, I'm now a single-issue voter against amnesty, so Christie's off my list. Our next speaker, Ted Cruz, is still on my list.
Good evening. I'm Kenneth Harbin. I'm from Ohio. Is there any advice that you can give us young, vocal black conservatives with dealing with attacks from the liberal mob? And will you go on a date with me?
Yes, absolutely, young man. I'm just going to need a note from your mother. What was this advice for? I'm already imagining our date. I'm sorry, I forgot what the question was. Advice for, young black conservatives?
Yes.
Well, I have good news. Also relating, back to the amnesty issue. I've been saying this in nearly every radio interview and trying to slip it into every column I write. Mitt Romney won 20% of black males under the age of 30. That is a stunning number. I mean, the traditional home of blacks is in the Republican Party as described in my latest smash bestseller mugs. blacks and Republicans go together like chocolate and peanut butter. And I think the reason, but you know, the Democrats stole them away by lying about the history of civil rights and the history of Republicans, all set straight and mugged. And I think the reason Romney did so astronomically well among young black males is they want jobs, and they don't want to be competing with illegal aliens for jobs. You know, blacks have been in this country longer than, their roots in America go back longer than most whites. I think we owe them something more than someone who has just run across the border. Is there still a mic there?
Over here.
Sorry, I can't see the audience at all. I have a vague idea there's a mic out there.
Almost straight ahead. Almost. Hi, this is Daniel Rivera. I have a two-pronged question for you. First, I have my mother's signed consent statement. We can absolutely go on a date. So, I mean, I'll meet you right outside. Point two, much has been made recently of the Republican Party need for a facelift by the liberal media. You know, they're running around crazy saying we've been defeated, as you said. And it's a little bit annoying. But on a more specific level, we have been doing horribly with minorities and women. And I was wondering what your thoughts on that were on the first end of the question. And on the second end, much has also been made of the GOP divided. But in the conference, I've noticed you have speakers like Marco Rubio on one hand, and then you've got Ron Paul on the other. Vastly different, but both test well with independents, minorities, and women. So I was wondering your thoughts on that, too. And, yeah.
First of all, I mean, this idea that the Republican Party is a party of old white men, the average age at our convention of both the speakers and the attendees was about 15 years younger than at the Democratic convention. I may be exaggerating slightly, but not by much. I mean, I kept hearing, oh, Republicans, they want to take us back, they want to take us back. I look at the Democratic National Convention. It's Jimmy Carter, Michael Dukakis, Teddy Kennedy. Wait, who's trying to bring you back here? And as for the groups Republicans don't do well with, I think, well, for one thing, we're actually doing pretty well with white women. With married women, with single women. Mitt Romney did better than John McCain with every single possible demographic, including evangelicals. We were told, oh, evangelicals won't vote for the Mormon. Every single religious group, Jews, evangelicals, Catholics, more of them voted for Mitt Romney than voted for McCain. The only two groups that voted more for McCain than for Romney were Asians and Hispanics, the two largest immigrant groups this country has been taking in for the last 30 years. I've said this before, Teddy Kennedy specifically designed his Immigration Act of 1965 to change America demographically without checking with the American people. It's virtually impossible to immigrate here from Europe now. About 80% of our immigrants for the last 30 years have come from the third world. About 60% of them go on welfare, much higher percentage than native-born Americans. This is so Democrats get themselves more voters. We have a more dependent society. We have people who want welfare, and we cannot get the votes of a dependent society without changing our principles. I mean, they're awful people, Democrats. Every time a woman has a child out of wedlock, Democrats think, oh, great, another Democratic voter. Every time a family gets divorced, fantastic, another Democratic voter. Every time someone loses his job and goes on welfare, fantastic, another Democratic voter. No, we offer hope, opportunity, and jobs, and I hope that we offer a change to our absolutely suicidal immigration policies.
Thank you.
Ann, could you agree that even here at CPAC there seems to be some confusion? It was not a conservative defeat in 2012. It was a Boston liberal Republican defeat, I believe, with Mr. Romney. And I just want to ask you if you can help clarify why it's important that Mr. Bush not be our nominee, and Mr. Christie not be our nominee, and Mr. Cruz and some of the other great conservatives, real conservatives, in great part thanks to Jim DeMint, that are out there for us today. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to give you some rules for choosing our next presidential nominee. I don't have a candidate yet, but I do have some rules for who shouldn't be running. And I've made this mistake, so I'm not blaming any of you. Among the candidates I've supported for president have included Pete DuPont, Pat Buchanan, Steve Forbes, Duncan Hunter. No, you can't run a congressman. I have learned that. You cannot run a governor from a state that's only as big as a congressional district. That's the equivalent of running a congressman. We can't run businessmen, pundits, people who have not run and won elections in at least a mid-sized state. So we're looking at governors and senators. Once you throw in the governors and senators, let's see how they debate. Let's look at their positions then. And we have, I was telling him I couldn't get to sleep last night, so instead of counting sheep, I was counting Republican candidates. And we have a pretty good list of them. Going with the governors, we have Sandoval of Nevada. Yeah, he's pro-choice, but maybe we can change him. And again, I'm a single-issue voter against amnesty. There's Martinez of New Mexico. There's Rick Snyder of Michigan. There is Paul DuPage, the governor of Maine. There is, I'm sorry, he's got to be in the running, Chris Christie of New Jersey. I, of course, will now be against him unless he changes on amnesty. There's Rick Scott of Florida. There's Mike Pence of Ohio. There's Indiana. There's John Kasich of Ohio. And in the Senate, you got Ron Johnson, Ted Cruz, and I say we just... Scott Walker. I also have, okay, you have your favorites out there. I say throw them in a debate and let's see them, but I should also tell you at this moment that I also have height requirements. So if you didn't hear your favorite senator, think of, or governor, put him next to the clown at the roller coaster. See if he hits the height requirement. And I wouldn't get, too wedded to any one candidate now. Let's see how they do in a debate. Let's see what their records are. And most importantly, let's see what their position is on amnesty. Thank you. Drive safely.